Okay, hi guys. Doing a little video here and might as well start it off with our daily bow drill practice. So I hope you guys are well anyhow. We're into November now. Just blew that ember into flame there with, you see the black smoke coming off it, that's the oils in birch bark. So we've got a bit of a special night for you today. Well, most of the nights we do are special. But I'm going to talk to you today about the tracker knife. Now, many of you guys that have seen, I'll just take my tattoo off. It's starting to get a bit colder now here in Ireland too, which is a good thing. Most of you guys, I'm sure you've seen the film The Hunted, and you'll recognise this shape of knife from The Hunted. Now, it's not, it wasn't designed as a movie prop. The tracker knife predates the film by about 20 years, and in fact, where the tracker knife, Tom Brown Jr. designed the tracker, and it was as a result of an interview he gave on radio with a journalist, and they asked him what was the best survival knife in existence, and he kind of pondered on it for a few minutes and said, well, I'm not really sure because I haven't designed it yet. So I suppose out of that the gauntlet was thrown. Me personally, I am using a tracker knife for, well, before the film came out I had a tracker. In actual fact, I was discussing it recently with a few of the guys that work in Tops, and I remember how I ordered a knife. It was like, any of you guys that are in your early 30, 32, 33 years of age, you probably would have been still in primary school when I got my first tracker. I got my first tracker in, I'm going to say 2001, and it was, I'm still not a great internet guy, but back then it was done by pen and paper and Western Union, and that's how I got my knife. I replied to an advertisement that I had seen in Guns and Ammo. I don't even know if that magazine still goes. It's an American shooting and firearms magazine. So anyhow, that's how long I'm using a tracker, an awful long time. In fact, I think the only person in the country that's using a tracker as long as me would be Gary, and we're still both using them, and we still both advocate the use of the tracker. The tracker is a marvellous knife, and this is a rendition of it made by Ed Martin Knives. Now, Ed Martin makes some of the finest knives in the world, there's no doubt about this, and this one is even a little bit larger than the conventional tracker, or even a good bit bigger than, and thicker too, than the Tops one, which is a 1/4 inch thick. He has the crisscross teeth on it, like we might call the Swiss Army teeth. And this really isn't for the purpose of sawing. People say, oh, it doesn't saw great and blah blah blah. Really what this is for is notching. So it's a great way to, if you're even using notches to tie a shelter together, or if you're using notches for trapping, or even tearing out a notch out of a heartboard, it's very, very good for that. We have a 90-degree spine here, and it's made from 80 CRV steel, which is a very, very tough carbon tool steel. We'll do a little bit of battling with it anyhow. So everybody's opinions on knives differ, of course, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's absolutely fine. But my thinking on a knife as a survival knife, it has to be able to serve as, one, a knife that can create shelter in the natural environment, and this definitely ticks that box. And number two, it has to be able to work as a good fire tool. So this knife is battening down through stuff here, absolutely no problem. People say, well, there's no purpose for battening in survival at all. I totally disagree with that. Ireland is a country that is, and I can only speak from my experience here in Ireland, because that's where I do my survival. But in Ireland, our forests are predominantly covered in pine. And pine being a soft timber, soaks up, dead wood soaks up water like you wouldn't believe. It's like a sponge. So we would need the batten to get to the inner core here of drier timber. Now as you can see, it's a monster going through all of this stuff. It's really, nothing poses a problem for a tracker style knife. In fact, if there was, the only problem that lies within the tracker knife is the ability to keep it sharp in the field. When I got my tracker first, I didn't particularly like it, and I really only stuck with it because it cost me so much money. And we're talking about back, although it's not that long ago, it's actually, in terms of what we could get here in Ireland, it's an awful long time ago. But at that point in time, probably the best knife that you could get your hands on in Ireland would be probably something like a Buck 119, you know. And to be fair, great hunting knife and whatever, but with a hollow grind on it and 420 stainless steel is probably not really idyllic for it to serve as a survival knife. And things have come forward here. I suppose the world has opened up to all of us here in Ireland, and we can now get our hands on dedicated survival knives, and this is definitely a dedicated survival knife. Now Ed calls this the WTK Wilderness Trail Knife, whereas the original model would be called a WSK. I particularly like this knife because it has this exposed pommel on it, and I like big knives that can do stuff like that. Okay, I have no time, and I've no time for knives that could break in a survival scenario. I take survival very, very seriously. It's great to be a hobbyist and all that, but I do actually take survival very seriously, and I take teaching it very, very seriously, to the extent that I personally train every day in some sort of survival, and I usually train physically twice a day myself as well, because at the end of the day, and I know I sound like a broken record, these survival tools are really no good if this survival tool isn't functioning properly. So we do need to realise that we can't buy our way out of survival, and sometimes we have to take our ass off the couch and get out there and burn some calories and get used to being cold and get used to being wet and get used to being hungry. After all, we're not made of sugar and our skin is waterproof. And you have to be a little bit tougher with yourself in general, and that's what I try to explain to students. Back to the knife anyhow. This 90-degree spine, we'll just check it with a ferro rod. Now I've been using this knife, what would you say, about 5 months now. I've been using it about 5 months now, and because I don't like doing videos on stuff straight away, because it's not completely honest then, is it? I mean, I don't know how good it is. This has been, I've taught a number of courses with this knife, and it has been used fairly heavily, and it doesn't really seem to show much signs of wear and tear. It's designed for working hard. So in terms of striking a ferro rod, absolutely no problem whatsoever, okay? And without yet again sound like a broken record, our hand is anchored in here with the knife, and we are drawing the ferro rod back. It's not a case of drawing the knife towards it. By effect, then you push your hard-earned tinder all over the place. So the types of stroke that I like is that one, where we're pulling back like this. Knife is anchored and we pull back, or else we can use a manner where the knife is here already and our tinder is down here, and we're throwing the knife towards us. And this is a pretty effective method too, and quite safe because the blade is buried in a log or whatever. But whatever tinder we have here, you can probably see it coming up on the camera, the sparks are directed directly to where your tinder is. So that's an alternative. So guys, you know this is what I'm carrying on me all the time. What we've got here, I'll just go through it again. Boring, I know, but really we have to go over and over the basics, and then eventually you have them all the time. Like my fire ferro rod, a clear lighter with a cable tie on it, so I cannot allow any escape of gas out of that lighter. That's completely full. The Fox whistle, Fox 40, it's a peerless survival whistle, very loud, and it's much better than screaming for help in a survival scenario. And we've got our little photon LED light, which these are fantastic, and like, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it gets us out of trouble when we're trying to do something under cover. What else have I got in my pocket here? That's just another lighter. So this is an everyday lighter, I suppose, because I have that one taped off. We've gaffer or duct tape rather on that. Another lighter, a Zippo lighter. Okay, so as you can see, I fall heavy on fire. I have a little carabiner clip here that I clip that all back onto, and that carabiner clip is clipped to my belt rather than the tab on my trousers. So because tabs on trousers can break quite easily, but a leather belt won't. You will probably see me using this knife, you know, quite a lot, because it's not a cheap knife. And to my knowledge, there's probably only 2 of these in Ireland. I know Gary has one, and this, hence the reason I got one. I was so impressed with it. I think it's possibly one of the best shelter building stroke fire knives you could possibly have. And just to show you the little rig it came with, I also have this cute little knife that attaches to it. It's called the Bandit, made by Ed as well. They're made out of old saw blades. And my thinking on that is it'd be a great little tool for making up figure 7 notches and whatnot. It's incredibly sharp, and has a very, very thin profile. And what I like about a thin profile is when you're carving very, very delicate trap triggers or whatever, and you want a knife to be in a particular area, you can see exactly where it is because it's only hair thick. Okay, the downside of that is you could not batten with this, or you know, anything like that, but you know, you definitely punch a rabbit with it. And as I said, what I have it for is cutting out keyholes or in hardboards, because it's so precise, it's scalpel precise. Great little knife. What else came in the rig here? He has a little survival kit came in it. I haven't really done anything with this really, because I carry my own personal kit on me all the time, but there's, I suppose, a little bit of fishing line in it, a few tinder tabs, a bit of emery tape there. Okay, like I said, I always carry my own dedicated survival kit, you know, but it's handy to have. We have a ferro rod on it and a striker, and we have one of these, I think they're called an easy lap. Yeah, easy lap. So that's just to maintain your edge in the field. It's quite a rough diamond thing, but you know what? It'll make the knife sharp and serviceable in the field. Like, and we have to understand too, there's some guys out there and they're over fussy about how sharp a knife is. Yes, I like to have my knife razor sharp, but in the field you're not going to maintain your knife razor sharp. You can maintain it close to razor sharp, but I also find sometimes a little bit of tootiness in a blade is good. And I've also found over the years that when skinning game or whatever, that a less than razor sharp blade is better, because it's less inclined to cut fur, whereas a razor sharp one will shave the fur falling into the carcass, where a kind of a slightly tooty edge works better. That's just my opinion. A knife like this can be used in a delicate fashion, and how one would do that is pushing that up your sleeve, pushing this lanyard up your sleeve. So what we're effectively doing now is we're taking the weight of the blade onto this lanyard, and now we can do quite delicate skinning. And I, to be honest, I haven't skinned deer with this one, but I have skinned numerous deer with other tracker style knives that would be of the same ilk in terms of weight. overall, I'm very pleased with this knife, and I'm hoping within the next week to be able to show you another rendition of a tracker knife, possibly the very original Beck version, if everything works out. So guys, thanks for dropping by. I'm sorry I haven't been on YouTube in a while, but we've been really busy, and it's been a funny old year in terms of doing courses and classes and teaching, and yet every time we have classes full, the rug is kind of dragged from beneath our feet, where we have to go back into COVID restrictions and stuff like that. So we're hoping to have a better 2021 in terms of Eagle Reef survival and teaching. But thanks for dropping by, guys, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.